Welcome, Goddess, for another episode on Authentically Healed Women's Trauma Healing Podcast. I am Chloe, your host, your favorite feminist bestie, psychotherapist, and alternative therapies practitioner. And today's episode is going to be about patriarchy, misogyny. I wanted to dive deeper into our societal issues in terms of patriarchy, which is obviously linked to colonialism and modern misogyny, and in which ways we as women are still oppressed, what belief systems are still trying to be pushed on us, what are the societal issues we're facing today, whether those are in public spaces or intimate spaces, personal spaces. I wanted to explore that today and open a discussion about those societal issues, obviously, that are important to discuss about. And obviously, we are on Women's Trauma Healing Podcast. So we're going to be talking about everything that is linked to being a woman in this world, in this society, but also in correlation with the reality we live in. And, without avoiding reality, but diving deep into reality and facing, the things that are important for our liberation. So, to start out with, I wanted to touch on the state of our society today in a general sense. So, obviously, as a lot of people like to remind us, we obviously have evolved um, in a certain way. Women have in most countries, unfortunately, and I'll probably touched on that later in this episode, but unfortunately in certain countries women have the condition of women have gone backwards, unfortunately. And I'm thinking about women in Afghanistan, obviously, who are now forbidden to even speak. So that I'll be touching on later. But in general, in a lot of countries, women are now, legal citizens of society. We're now allowed to be financially independent, which is extremely important and obviously was necessary to get where we are today. Nevertheless, I personally don't believe that's enough. I personally don't believe that's going to change completely society at all. I don't think we should just accept this and be complacent in this and just feel like we've received so much and just feeling like we owe anything to society. For me, that should be normal. Obviously, as I just mentioned, in certain countries today, things have moved backwards for women, and women today have even been stripped, like the right of being citizens of society have been stripped away from them in certain countries, and other countries are going towards that direction. Obviously, there's also a rise of fascism in the past decades again. And when I'm thinking of the United States currently, laws about in certain states about um abortions and rights being stripped away from women, causing a lot of issues such as imprisonment of women because they cannot verify if it's a miscarriage or an abortion, which is illegal now in certain states in the United States. Like, this is why I personally believe we still need to remain conscious and and not being disconnected from reality, because when we don't connect with reality, we can very much easily end up in situations like those situations. Like, if collectively we don't remain aware, those can go backwards, obviously. And it's never something that we acquire fully, because we're still in a patriarchal society. There are still forces and people who believe women should be silenced. There are still men who are extremely sick, and some women but mostly men who are sick and want to see women suffer, who have deep, deep psychological issues and do not want to self-reflect, obviously, and cannot self-reflect and are literally sick mentally in a way that is extremely hard to, alter and better, and want to see women who want to see women suffer, want to oppress women. And as you can see, for instance, in Afghanistan, a lot of like it's never enough for those men. Like they will strip away your rights, and then they would. Now we're at the point in Afghanistan where women cannot speak, and now they cannot sing. Like how those things, they cannot even, at this point they cannot exist in public spaces, right? Which a lot of men want to control women in public spaces. But then it's not enough. They need to stop speaking. They need to stop breathing, basically, and those things are never enough, to the point that, like, those types of mentalities are just driven by sick people who will never have enough power over women, because the inherent existence of women bothers them. So they can oppress as much as they want women. They just basically want them out of their view. They want them to not exist. They want them dead. And so it's never enough. As long as a woman exists in her body and it's always going to be an issue for those kinds of men. So for me, it's not a matter of, well, we should be grateful for what we have. Yeah, but if we're not aware, if we're not conscious, things can be taken away from us very easily, because we live in a society that is built on, it is patriarchal. So we've evolved in this society, but patriarchy is still there. A lot of people hold still this belief. A lot of people in power especially people in power, hold those beliefs. So that's the part where it's dangerous, because we're always on a fine line between things being stripped away from us and things remaining the way they are and moving forward. And one of the things I think personally makes it very difficult for us to move forward as a society has more to do with mental conditioning, psychological conditioning, and emotional conditioning as well, nervous system conditioning as well. And that's what I wanted to touch on today in this episode. It's the inner patriarchy I want to touch on today, because what is keeping us stuck as women, what is keeping us in a certain reality as well. If we take a little spiritual roots on that topic, if we take the root of manifestation, of us human beings manifesting our reality, well, one of the things, the reason why patriarchy exists and this society exists is because we hold certain beliefs within us, we hold certain traumas within us that makes this reality possible, to exist. Like, that's why it exists as well. Obviously, there are parts in a human being's experience, I personally believe, that requires action, but there's also part of a human being's experience that requires inner healing, inner reflection as well, and presence. I think in the past we had to fight to get a certain level of rights, a space in society. It was completely out of survival. We had no choice, because without it would be enslaved for our entire lives. There would be no space of healing, like, it's a privilege in this society to be able to heal. It's a privilege in this society to be able to have peace, to be able to be with our own thoughts, to be able to be in our own presence. It's a privilege in this society. There are plenty of people who are in places in the world where they are in survival mode every day. It's their lives that every day is threatened, so they don't have the space to slow down. They don't have the space to heal, to do the inner reflection they need to do, because there's no there's no space for them to be at peace. There's war or there's oppression in one shape or another. So it's when you have the privilege to be able to sit with your thoughts, I believe as women, what we should be focusing on is our healing and trauma healing, so that we can collectively manifest a new reality, and we can collectively get stronger, and we can collectively make choices that will have a ripple effect on this entire society, and a powerful one and a positive one, so that we can return back to a balanced, equal, respectful of nature society. That's my belief personally. And so for me, there's a lot going on in terms of inner healing inside of us as women when it comes to patriarchy. There's a lot of things that holds us back still to this day, I think, and has a direct, even if we don't realize, direct impact on the collective experience, on this society, on feeding into patriarchy, feeding into this society. And so we're gonna dive deeper into that in a minute. I wanted to also say that emotionally, there's a lot going on, basically. So before I continue, I want to invite you to make sure to follow me on TikTok, where I share even deeper, content about feminism, but also trauma healing for women, relationships tips as well. So make sure to follow me on this platform and Instagram as well, where you'll see more content around this topic. If you like those kinds of topic and you're interested, feel free to follow me there. And make sure to also subscribe to my YouTube channel if you're hearing me on YouTube or on Spotify. Make sure to follow my podcast so that you can be updated every time I release a new episode. Okay, so inner patriarchy, psychological conditioning is for me one of the causes of misogyny amongst women, because we know misogyny amongst men as well, but amongst women, there's a lot of self-hatred that causes misogyny amongst women and women's oppression amongst women. And sometimes we might think, well, you have to be really disturbed to think that way, or you have to be really disturbed to not think nature is important or animals' lives are important, or still eats, like eating meat for certain people. Like, there are a lot of things that create confusion that people are confused about. But truly, it has everything to do with our inner conditioning and inner patriarchy, and the way we've been conditioned to hate ourselves, to hate a lot of aspects of being a woman that are naturally built in a woman, which is exactly what a lot of men, not all obviously, but a lot of men have been conditioned to also despise. And one of obviously the most, known ways of women's oppression is the way patriarchy and men have made women's emotions a mockery, a joke, and women's intuition a joke as well, because those two things are our power. And we've been also conditioned to doubt our intuition. And far away as well, we have been conditioned to also be disconnected from our inner natural ability to self-heal, to our, our intuition and all of those things. So this has created, we have evolved as women into very confused being as well. And we're very often time we're very confused due to that. And that is how we uphold patriarchy and this society. It's through this confusion. It's through the lack of clarity. It's through trauma that creates confusion within us. And so due to that, we struggle to see clearly things. We are very vulnerable to being manipulated. We tolerate a lot of things because we are confused. It's not necessarily because we are bad people. It's because, I, as a woman, held misogyny for a long time, and I'm still growing out of my inner conditioning. It is not a overnight process. And it is not a bad thing if you hold misogyny. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means that you've been conditioned in a certain way. What differentiates someone who becomes a threat to others or becomes a bully and someone who remains open is just consciousness. What is important is to be conscious that there are things that we need to move and liberate ourselves from. That's what is the most important. That prevents you from being a bully. That prevents you from upholding patriarchy. That prevents you from passing down patriarchy to your children as much as possible. And there are things that can be out of our control, but as long, I personally believe, as we focus on our liberation and inner healing and trauma healing, even if we'll pass down a little bit of patriarchy, we'll pass down less patriarchy. And it is our duty, our responsibility. We came here for that, to do our best to focus on that healing so that we do not pass down. Because the truth is, when you have children, for instance, or in general in your life, we are not fully conscious about our entire behavior. It's not possible to be conscious about your entire behavior. It is not possible to just use your intellect to avoid to pass down patriarchy or pass down trauma. There are things that we're not aware of that we will be passing down, that no matter how intentional we are, we will still pass those things down, because those things can only be dismantled once we move through trauma and the confusion. And we cannot acknowledge those things because we're still on some level confused. So it's not about being fully, yes, being intentional with your healing and trauma healing, yes, but being intentional about like wanting to do things in a specific way, or being constantly hyper vigilant to not pass down things. You can be the most hyper vigilant person. There are things that you're not aware within yourself. It is part of the human experience. And so you can be the most intentional, conscious person. You will still pass down some level of patriarchy inevitably. And then the only way to avoid that, or partially avoid that, is to actually focus and be intentional about trauma healing and actually looking at yourself. Because it's easier to be hyper in control, hyper focused, hyper vigilant, than actually healing the root cause of certain behaviors that you're not aware of, that you're passing down on to your kids or you're having with other people. Those can be as simple, as small as just certain thoughts and certain energetic vibration that feels the patriarchy, that feels, even if you're not acting on or being a bully, but certain thoughts fuels patriarchy, fuels this society, and upholds this society. So we've been conditioned to hate, to be confused, to not trust our intuition, to feel like our emotions also are boundaries, are a joke, that we're hysterical if we set boundaries, that we're hysterical if we feel emotions, that we are dramatic if we're connected to nature and we feel things in a deep way. Like that's being dramatic, when actually those are our inner guidance system that helps us remain are there to help us create a sane society, help us protect Mother Earth, help us be balanced and healthy human beings. And in this society, the violence that is normalized, we call people who are sensitive dramatic because we are so numb to violence and to daily, like a certain level of violence that's been normalized, which is not normal. And I'm not saying this, and I'm not making this episode again to shame anyone or to make you feel like you are not good enough or you're not doing things well, because again, I am deconditioning myself from patriarchy still. I am still on this journey just like you, and I am absolutely not perfect, and I am still passing down some level of patriarchy. Like there's part of me that I'm still figuring out. So it's not to say that you need to be ashamed of yourself right now or that you're not good enough, okay? It's just to shed light on certain things. And then everyone has their own timing to work through them, okay? But it's just to open this discussion, this reflection, and maybe shed light on certain things that you might still be confused about, or bring clarity about certain things, or just bring this conversation to the surface, basically. Um, so first part also, aside from, again, so self-hatred is one thing with us women. Um, but that self-hatred as well, I want to emphasize on that, is is also taught to men and boys. So like hating their emotions, hating their, like not being comfortable with their emotions. And then when a girl who's has this special spiritual connection with the earth, with the universe, appears and has such depth in her, then those little boys don't, find it, can see it dramatic, can see it as, being dramatic, because in the first place, they don't value their emotions. They haven't been conditioned or socialized to understand the power of emotions, So it's something that they've been taught to discard. So in contrast to that, obviously, women are not going to be listened to. Little girls are going to be raised in a context where people are not going to listen to their emotions, are not going to see them as they used to be seen in older societies, in ancient societies, as guidance, as power, as sacred. It's not held as sacred. So unfortunately, that's why a lot of little girls grow up feeling like, as little girls, we grow up feeling like we're emotional, we're a joke, we don't grow up very confident in our emotions, in our intuition, because everyone around us makes us feel like we're being dramatic, makes us feel like our emotions are not valid, and things like that, right? Are minimizing how we feel and things like that, are not, and just simply not listening to it, just disregarding it, not listening to it, not thinking, well, if she's feeling that intense emotions, maybe there's something that is in balance and she can sense it, So we are raised to feel like we're being dramatic, we're that our emotions are not those sacred things. We're taught the opposite. Those are things that are disruptive. Emotions are disruptive. The emotions makes us lose focus. Our emotions are an inconvenient and things like that. And that's things that we keep hearing as little girls as we grow up also, for, most women. And you see this everywhere, in every culture today, every society, every different, culture and different layers of society. It's always the same. And obviously there are exceptions to the rules, but still a big majority, so otherwise, would not be in this society, in this patriarchal society. It would have shifted a long time ago. So it's still a big portion of society that is operating that way. And there are exceptions to the rules, thank God, and that is beautiful. If it's your case, feel free to comment or share your story. I would love to hear it, because thank God for the exceptions to the rules. The same way little boys or men, there are men out there who have been raised in a different way and who actually respect women and honor their emotions and don't, understand the depth of women, respect the depth of women in that sense, right? So there's this conditioning. So let me know if you've experienced that as well. Feel free to share as well your experience with that. I know that's been an experience I had, obviously, like, and it's not to say and throw shades on, oh my God, my family did wrong or people around me did wrong. And it's not to throw shades on people, because again, it's unconscious. It's not, aside from being in an abusive household or being having abusive parents or abusive people around you, which will always find something to abuse you with. But from a general perspective, those kinds of beliefs are not meant to be harmful. A lot of the time, it's unconscious for most people. If you're dealing with abuse and someone really just targeting you for everything you do, basically. So if it's not personal, it's just an unconscious behavior. Like, it doesn't make people bad. It's just very unconscious, again, because they've been raised that way. So when we were raised that way, it's very hard to change the patterns. Even if you're conscious and you want to do differently, not like your parents, there will always be a little percentage in this moment now, in this era of patriarchy, that you're going to pass down to if you have a daughter, for instance, you're going to pass down that to her without being conscious about it. So if you think about people who are not conscious, don't have this consciousness, didn't have this awakening, obviously they're going to pass down those things to us as women, and patriarchy is gonna be upheld, little boys and little girls, little girls are still gonna be treated differently than little boys, and again, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to be committed to healing and your healing journey and trauma healing and your liberation, so that will impact directly what you're going to be passing down. That's why we need, as mothers, as parents, to focus also on our healing in general, because that's going to be the detrimental factor of how society is going to evolve. Because if we don't heal the trauma, the confusion within us, we can take all the actions that we want, things are not going to change as long as we don't have the courage to commit to facing ourselves on a daily basis and constantly. That's my opinion. So, alongside with that type of conditioning, when we're conditioned this way, in childhood as women, so we're conditioned to not trust our intuition. We're conditioned to feel like we're somehow dramatic or too sensitive. And then we also, when we grow up, there's all this hate from men that comes to the surface when we start hitting puberty. There's a lot of hate going towards us. There's also, the way that our fathers or men treat us as well. If we haven't been, as children, abused, essayed, and things like that, we at least, when we grow up and hit puberty, start being treated differently as well and humiliated and sexualized very early as women. And so our body becomes the main subject in the family. And then depending on your culture, depending on where you're from, depending on the country, it's going to be a different intensity. Yet there's always a discussion about the way we're going to be dressing, the way we're going to present ourselves. And also the way we're going to be treated by our fathers, who oftentimes have internalized misogyny, which can create a lot of pain and emotional abandonment for a little girl, for a young girl. And so, and that can also happen with the mother, with women. Everyone is going to be, asking us to mold ourselves in a certain way so that everyone feels comfortable, whether that is about our body, the way we express ourselves, the way we are. We cannot be too confident. We cannot be too expressive. We cannot be, we have to shut up a little. We have to not trigger people. And that is something I think we all women experience, is this feeling that we cannot take up too much space. We have to also respect beauty standards so that people don't get uncomfortable if we don't fit it, it becomes an issue. Like, there are many, many rules and contrast rules that are pushed onto us so that we can be accepted in society. And that is extremely destructive. Those things are not pushed on men. Obviously, men are allowed to wear whatever they want. If they get their butt naked and they just, a man who just just gets naked for some reason, and everyone is going to find it funny. A woman who gets naked, everybody's going to be shocked, or a man who's just going to take his t-shirt off, nobody is going to bother him. Little, young boys can just go outside. They are allowed to be loud. People let little boys be loud. And little girls are expected to not be too loud because it's too masculine. It's not what is expected from a little girl or young woman. So the pressure from society is going to be different based on our gender. And then depending on our sexuality, we're going to face different things. If we fall into the accepted category of heterosexuality, well, we're going to be accepted, but then there's a lot of issues in, when it comes to relationships with men. It's going to be complicated in that sense. I'm going to touch on that in a minute. It's gonna be very complicated depending on our sexuality. And then if we end up being queer, part of the LGBTQ plus community, it's gonna be also, we're gonna face a lot of probably misogyny. We're gonna face a lot of rejection from society. If we're lucky, we'll have supportive parents and a supportive entourage, but we're still going to be facing a lot of oppression. And then the inner conditioning is going to kick in, because if you are gay, queer, trans, you're going to have to also decondition yourself from patriarchy to not keep those patterns in the community, which is hurtful to the community. In the community, you'll find people who are still struggling with misogyny, still struggling with patriarchy, and so will be hurtful to other people in the same community. Even in LGBTQ plus community, there are people who still uphold patriarchy. and will, because they still want to fit in, they still are struggling with their identity and feeling like they don't want to feel like outcast. They struggle with that. They probably have deep bonds and connections with people who are misogynist, people um who are homophobes, for instance, or transphobes, like, and so they don't want to lose that. And sometimes that's where also the conditioning kick in and a lot of painful thing happens and people hurt each other. It's because, and it's from a human sentiment, which is I don't want to be outcasted from everything I've known so far, from my family. Like, it's a very, very human feeling, understandable feeling. But so that's also how we can uphold patriarchy and hurt ourselves, hurt others in that sense. Um, and I think when it comes to us women, the difficulty we have is also that we so desperately sometimes want to fit in. We so desperately have been abandoned emotionally. We have so much trauma around that, that sometimes due to that, we're gonna we're gonna keep tolerating certain things because, again, we still want, deep down, we still want to fit in the society. We don't want to be an outcast. We're afraid of being rejected from the tribe, which again is a very human feeling. I know for me, it took me a lot of time to actually, you know, um, bet on myself and follow who I am and uphold my boundaries and set boundaries and refuse to be treated certain ways. So there's the response in the way we grow up and then the way we want to fit in, obviously. And then there's also relationships as well when it comes to our relationships, whether we are queer or in the LGBTQ community plus community, upholding still patriarchal beliefs and playing out again those gender roles. I know that in the LGBTQ plus community, some in the lesbian community, I know there's a lot of issues when it comes to, like, sometimes women haven't fully deconditioned themselves from patriarchy, so they expect the women who are more masculine, the masks, to act like men, like misogynistic men, which is obviously not healthy. And the same way in heteronormative relationships, we choose misogynistic men again, or we just still crave relationships. We feel like our value depends on meeting someone. We still crave partnership. We still deep down compromise ourselves for men. We don't set boundaries in relationships. We accept a lot. We let them weaponize incompetence. We tolerate a lot of things. We tolerate unconscious avoidant attachment. We tolerate disrespectful, basically, behavior because, again, I see even like there's a lot of, we give them a lot of excuse, we give men, we see that a lot in heteronormative relationships, but not only, but we tend as women get to give a lot of excuses to people who are being disrespectful, and oftentimes it's going to be about, oh, they're avoidant, they don't know how to show affection, or they have a lot of stress, or they're a workaholic, so that's who they are, when those behaviors are actually disrespectful. It's not someone who is struggling. Even people who mentally struggle are able to show affection and be nice in relationships, or to the least not engage in a long-term serious relationship or tell you they want a committed relationship where when they're not able to provide emotionally what is required for a relationship, like at least you're given honesty and someone who is not trying to manipulate you, you know? So, and I'm saying that because I used to have avoidant attachment. Um, and that didn't prevent me from actually being in alignment with that and being transparent with that and not making people hope for anything, being very transparent about it and not manipulating people for my own personal like it's not because you're avoidant that you have to be selfish or you have to manipulate people like and I see a lot of us women, we give a lot of excuses to partners who are just being disrespectful to us and just being manipulative and actually not valuing us the way we deserve, not loving us the way we deserve, and just treating us like disposable objects and treating us like as if we don't have feelings and we're not human beings, which is not normal. That's not healthy. And I think for me, this is just a symptom of conditioning again. And a lot of women are happy and content with those relationships. They will not leave those relationships still to this day. And even in my generation, I see a lot of women are still dealing with weaponized incompetence, are still accepting a lot of behaviors that are not normal. And that just shows that we're still upholding patriarchy on some level, even if it's not on a financial level, maybe. Although I want to say women are still not paid as much, but nevertheless, even if there's not inequality on a financial level in the workplace, although there's still misogyny in the workplace, women are allowed to go to work, but they're still going to be treated like sexualized at work when they're there to work, not to be sexualized. But that's besides the point. But even let's say if we now have rights and we shouldn't complain on an emotional level on a daily basis when you're a woman, you're still oppressed. Everywhere you go, you're gonna be sexualized very easily. And we're still upholding it unconsciously ourselves through the partner we choose, the things that we tolerate as well. And that was definitely my case. Like I used to think that, you know, I'm heterosexual. So I used to think that men in relationships were avoidant, like that men were just that way, you know, like I thought that men were not able to really be affectionate, um, like consistent, affectionate, and able to actually connect with their emotions. And I used to tolerate as well, like partners who would mistreat me basically and disrespect me and treat me like I am below them and would get caught up in them and wanting to make it work and being, you know, exhausting myself to make it work, exhausting myself to make them see me, exhausting myself to make them value me when fundamentally they didn't value me because I was a woman. So they would there was no way that was gonna change. It was not personal. It's just that a lot of men and a lot of people just don't value women, right? And so it was hard to change. I would exhaust myself to make them change, to hope they would change, hope they would see me. And over time, I understood, and even more when I met my husband, that someone who truly loves you will just see you. even more when I met friends, and soul connections and made real good friends. I had the same issue with friendships. Like when people truly love you, they just see you right off the bat. Like they see you. They don't pretend to see you. They don't love bomb you. They don't, you know, give you things out of guilt and then like they're not cold and then warm and then cold again. Someone who truly loves you will see you, will keep seeing you and would constantly see you and will always be there for you. They will not need to say anything to you. They will just be there and see you, But I used to give a lot of excuses in relationships due to that conditioning because I never was seen, first of all. I never was seen as a child when I grew like I didn't even know what it looked like to be seen. Some of us have the chance to be seen. Some of us have the chance to have had at least one parent or mother who saw us, who actually loved us. That's such a huge gift because then you have good standards and that's what you expect from friendships and relationships. But at the same time, a lot of us haven't been seen truly as women, as little girls, like we're oftentimes not seen, not loved properly. So we don't even know what it feels like to be seen. We're just so used to fight to be loved. We're so used to fight to be loved, to yeah, fight for people's love rather than being given love in the first place, being treated the right way in the first place, right? But we're so used to mold ourselves to people please, to be loved, that we don't even know what it looks like to be loved, to be seen, to be truly loved in a relationship. And talking about romantic relationship, to be given affection on a regular basis, to be actually seen, desired on a regular basis. Like we don't feel like that's possible. We haven't experienced it, so we think, oh, that doesn't exist, when that's like the normal way of loving each other. And it's so sad when you think about it that we have to settle for less in this society. Everyone has to settle for less because we feel we're not worthy of being loved like that. We don't know how it feels like to be loved like that, and we don't feel like it's attainable. When it's just, it's not that it's a big standard. It's just that that's how we love. And when you think about it, I know for me also, I would think, at one point I was like, it's kind of odd when you think about it. Like I am capable of loving unconditionally, right? In relationships, I'm capable of being so understanding, communicate, like doing all the effort necessary. Basically, like I literally exhausted myself in relationships in the past to make it work, like exhausted myself. So patient, so compassionate, so understanding. Yet I couldn't receive that. I had to settle for less than what I was capable of giving. Like there's no way, if you're capable of giving that amount of love, that you don't deserve that in return, that people are not capable of giving you that in return. If you haven't been given that in return, or you even in childhood, it's because people have been conditioned out of love, have been conditioned with patriarchy, have been conditioned with self-hate, so they weren't able to give it to you. But that doesn't mean, it's not because they weren't able to give it to you, or this person is not able to give it to you, that you are not deserving of true love and unconditional love from people, whether that is in a relationship, a romantic relationship, or friendship, or amongst, family members. That's why I personally believe family doesn't mean anything if there's no unconditional love. Blood doesn't mean anything if there's no unconditional love. If nobody wants to grow together, and again, it's fine to be human. Nobody is perfect, but if there's not the willingness to love each other unconditionally, to grow, to be patient with each other, to be able to grow with each other, to look at ourselves, to self-reflect, like to make those relationships work, even if you're related with blood, it doesn't mean anything. there needs to be unconditional love. Otherwise, or, and the desire to better ourselves together. Otherwise, that's not true love. That's just conditional love, uh, comfortable love. It feels comfortable, but it's not true love. And as women, we're so used to conditional love, we don't know what unconditional love looks like. I didn't know what unconditional love looked like. For a long time, I didn't know. I didn't know how it felt like to be actually seen, loved, desired, um, like not avoided, um, having someone who actually wants to spend time with me, having someone who actually wants to um like, yeah, spend time with me, be with me, appreciate me, someone who actually, is in the relationship with me, who's not opportunistic, but actually just gives to me because they want to give to me, because they just appreciate me for who I am, not because I did something to them, not out of duty, out of actual desire to give, to love me. So patriarchy for me again is something that isn't today, most importantly internal. The way we handle our healing journey, our liberation as women. I don't think personally that we can liberate ourselves if we don't commit to it. We have to commit to it. I know for me, once I started committing to it, things starting to shift a lot in my life, but keeps shifting. Like being committed to that is a way to rebel. For me, my rebellion is by being committed to my liberation so that I can also support others' liberation, but and have a ripple effect. But that's my rebellion. The fact that I don't let society distract me from me, that I feel my emotions, that I address my trauma on a daily basis, that I do my best to not run away from myself. Obviously, when we're dealing with trauma or depression or things that are really severe, sometimes we have to run away, we have to cope with it. That's not what I'm talking about. Obviously, if you're dealing with mental health issues, that's not what I'm talking about. If you're dealing with also physical illnesses, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm just saying doing your best to not run away from things that you don't need to run away from, if that makes sense. Like certain emotions, sometimes we're so comfortable in running away. Sometimes we need to push ourselves to not run away from certain emotions and do our best to actively address those traumas, seek professional support. And again, wisely, because obviously obviously in the mental health field, there's a lot of colonialism going on. I know I am absolutely aware, and I've experienced that myself, that there's a lot of colorism and racism in the mental health field, and that on the spectrum of skin color, the darker we are, the less likely we're going to be taken seriously. And if we look different and we look foreign or we look brown or black, we're often going to feel unsafe and not be supported the way we deserve. I'm completely aware of that. Again, that's why I personally decided to become a therapist and to help women, but also all women, and decolonize myself as well so that I can support in a healthy manner women of color as well. So I'm aware of that. So again, make sure to seek the right therapist. And I understand that it can take time, but that's the best rebellion you can have. Just taking even just the time to find, just putting the energy into finding someone who can support you is good enough. It's committing to your liberation, finding the right support for your mental health or finding the right tools and focusing on feeling and doing your best to not run away and making that the center of your life. That's how we can rebel. That's how we can heal. That's how we can change society, in my opinion, again. Because then the actions also that we take will be efficient as well. And again, our liberation is both action and feeling and self-liberation, but we need self-liberation as well. To liberate ourselves from the society, we need self-liberation. We need to decolonize, to decondition ourselves from patriarchy as well. Like, we need to do that because otherwise we will remain very manipulable, compliant in this society, feeding into this society, and letting the people in power win very easily because we're going to remain in a state of confusion. We're going to remain in a state of confusion, feeling lost, and harming without being aware of it, passing down the exact same thing we've been taught. And just even through the generations that comes after us, we need to be able to pass down healthy things so that the next generation can fight even more. But in my opinion, that's the most important rebellion, is to liberate ourselves. From that place, we can take action. We can take efficient action. We can also have an impact on other people and things like that. So that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know in the comment section if you want me to dive deeper in a specific topic or more into something that I might have spoken about. And make sure to subscribe to my podcast on YouTube or Spotify so you're made aware of when I release a new episode. If you want more content as well around feminism, women's liberation, trauma healing, go ahead to my TikTok, follow me there, on Instagram as well. I have a Facebook page, but so if you are more on Facebook, feel free to check my Facebook page out if you prefer Facebook. Everything that I post on Instagram goes on Facebook, obviously. So you can also find my content on there as well. So that's it for this episode. And thank you for listening and watching. And until the next one, keep rising and keep shining, goddess. Sending you much love. Mwah.